What's up? My name is Konstantin Baum. I'm a master of wine, a retailer and a consultant. And this is my channel where we are thirsty for knowledge and wine. This series is called The Wine Tasting, where we do a deep dive tasting into some of the best wines in the world and some wines that might one day be amongst the best. You heard right, we are not tasting cheap and cheerful bag-in-box wines. We are tasting the creme de la creme of the wine world. I'm super excited again because we are tasting another aged wine. It's the 1996 Hermitage Le Meal from Chapoutier. I love my job. That's good. The Chapoutier family has a long history in the region of the Northern Rhone. In 1897, Marius Chapoutier and Rodolphe Delépine founded an exporting company together called Delépine et Chapoutier. And in 1929, Marius Chapoutier founded the M. Chapoutier Winery at the foot of the Hermitage Hill. In 1990, Michel Chapoutier became the head of the winery, and he really pushed the Chapoutier Winery towards plot selections, biodynamics and expansion. The background to this transition is quite interesting. A 26-year-old Michel Chapoutier bought out his family and then kicked out all of his family members, including his father. That's a pretty badass Game of Thrones move, but he explains it by saying that he really wanted to focus on quality, while his family didn't really want to focus on quality. Anyways, when Michel Chapoutier took over the winery, they were producing 500,000 bottles and they were really struggling. Today they're producing many millions of bottles and they are amongst the best producers in the Rhone. Michel Chapoutier really wanted to expand his winery brand across the borders of the Rhone, and he's now making wine in Australia, Portugal, Spain, in the south of France, Beaujolais, Alsace and some more regions. In the Rhone, Chapoutier really wants to focus on single grape expressions. His Côte Rôtie, for example, is only Syrah. Some of his Châteauneuf-du-Papes are only Grenache. And the white Hermitage, for example, is only Marsanne. The best wine Chapoutier produces are the single-vineyard expressions of the Hermitage Hill, and this one is one of them. Today, Michel's children, Maxime and Mathilde, have joined him at the estate, and you might have noticed that the family has a weird obsession with names starting with M. But now let's talk about the vineyard, Le Meal. The site is part of the Hermitage Hill and is considered by many as one of the best DODs in Hermitage. Michel Chapoutier himself calls it the Lafitte Rothschild of the Hermitage Hill, whatever that really means. Today the site is certified organic and biodynamic. In the site you can find terraces composed of clay and gravel, and the vines are pretty old. The average vine age is 50 years and the oldest vines are 90 years old. Le Meal is a pretty warm site due to its southern exposure, and you can produce quite rich and concentrated wines there. As you can see here, it's in the middle of the Hermitage slope and it's next to the Cru Bressard and between Greffieux at the bottom of the hill and L'Ermite at the top. The elevation is around 240 meters above sea level. Soil types have a lot to do with elevation. At the top of the hill where L'Ermite is, you have granitic soils. At the bottom of the hill where Le Greffieux is, you have alluvial soils that contain gravel and clay. If you want to learn more about the appellations of the Northern Rhone, then click up here or there for my video on the Northern Rhone. So let's talk about the wine. 96 was actually the first vintage of Le Meal, and roughly 5,000 bottles of the wine are being produced. Also since 1996, all of Chapoutier's wines have Braille writing on the label. This is a tribute to Maurice Monnier de la Cizeranne, who was the inventor of the first abridged Braille writing type. The first Chapoutier wine that actually had Braille writing on the label was the 1994, you guessed it, Hermitage La Cizeranne. If you can't read Braille, just like me, you might be interested in the information that you can find on the label. In Braille, you actually have the information on the producer, the vintage, the wine, and the color of the wine. Also special about Chapoutier's wines is that he likes to use the ancient Hermitage spelling without the H. So the wine is made from 100% Syrah grapes. The grapes are harvested by hand and the yields can be very low, sometimes as low as 15 hectoliters per hectare. The grapes are generally destemmed, vinification takes place in open-top fermenters, and the must is macerated for 4 to 6 weeks in concrete tanks. The wine is then matured for 14 to 18 months in new or 1-year-old barriques. So let's talk about the vintage. 96 was a colder vintage that favored those who waited with the harvest until the grapes were properly ripe. The wines from 96 are not as concentrated and rich as the wines from 95, for example. They are more structured, more lively, more fresh, and they can be really long-lived and great in quality, just like this one. So before we open this bad boy up, I just briefly want to talk about the price. I went on Wine Searcher and checked, and if you can find a bottle of this wine, which is a big if, you would have to pay 300 euros. So I'm getting out my big ass Syrah glass and let's start tasting. So I like to cut off the whole foil like this. This makes it easier in case I need to decant. It's always super exciting to taste an old bottle like this. You can see that the levels are pretty perfect. I mean, for 96 the level is pretty much exactly where you want to have it. And that might be also because the wine came straight from the producer and then went into storage with a good merchant who kept it for me. So the cork actually looks pretty much like it was new, which is amazing for a wine this old. So let's try a sip. Oh, I'm in love. I actually thought about decanting this wine, but now I kind of feel like it's actually perfect the way it is. It doesn't need much more air. The wine smells of blackberries, pepper, black olives. It also has a gamey dimension to it, which is quite interesting. It's a beautiful wine. On the palate you still have quite a lot of freshness, good ripe tannins. It's beautiful and harmonious, but it's not a big fat wine, it's more of a fresh and lively wine. The wine is definitely right in its maturity window. I don't regret opening it now, but it can wait for another 5 years, I guess. Tasting this wine, I'm starting to feel really hungry, but I think I know what I can do about that. Yes! Alright, that's much better. So first of all I need a repour. I need a little bit more wine to taste, that's for sure. And then secondly, this is a piece of lamb. And for me, Syrah and lamb go really well together. You could also have a nice piece of venison, for example. That matches Syrah also really well. With old Syrah, I also like dove, game bird, pheasant is nice too. But yeah, lamb is my favorite. So let's give this beauty another swirl. And let's taste it again. Delicious. It's been open for a bit more than an hour now. So it's opening up really well. It's getting more and more beautiful. There's more and more substance coming. I still don't really believe that you need to decant this wine. I think if you have the time, leave it in the bottle or in the glass and let it open up a bit more slowly. Let's try the food and wine match now. There's nothing better than a nice piece of meat that is cooked medium rare. Yeah. So together with the meat, the wine is a little bit more mellow, more rounded. And yeah, well, it's just two really nice things together. That's always good. So, what is my score? So this wine regularly gets 95 plus point scores. Sometimes they go up to 100 point even. And I think the 96 is not quite in the range above 95 points. Jeb Dunnock for Robert Parker gave it 95 points, and I actually think it's a little bit less than that. So I would give this wine 94 points, which doesn't mean that it's not a beautiful wine. I just don't think that it's quite there yet, which might be explained by the fact that it's the first vintage that Chapoutier ever bottled. Nevertheless, I really enjoy this wine, and I'm pretty sure that this bottle won't last much longer than the end of the day. So if you enjoyed this video, please like like it down here, subscribe to my channel, and make sure that you're not missing a video, because there's so much more really cool stuff coming up over the next few weeks and months. My question of the day is, which is your favorite Chapoutier wine? Please comment down here. I hope I see you guys again pretty soon. Until then, stay thirsty and cheers.